Hello, and welcome back to Parley, my improvised responses to the prompts you folks submit. This one was submitted by Just Rusty. Hope you'll enjoy listening. It's about why you might write a book. Just Rusty elaborates, as someone who's gone a fraction of the way into making a book writing my little D&D supplement, the one that we did for a few previous Parley, like about a year ago, I think, right? I have opinions on the process of it. I enjoyed the game design, actually didn't love the writing, but had so much fun working with the editor, which I think is not the normal way around. Most people I know who write hate the editing, but enjoy the writing process. That's an interesting claim. We can talk about that a little. What are your thoughts on it? Am I right in remembering you've said before you had to write a novella for uni? Would you write a book? Nice. Pretty elegant 3-section Parley. Why write a book? And the thing in my notes, as we'll get to in a minute. Steps, parts, processes of writing books, and how people can be interested in different combinations of them. It sounds like one thing, you write a book, but of course there are multiple parts, potentially a variable number of parts, and there is the process with which you write a book and adapt to what you do and don't enjoy about writing a book. Very interesting, for sure. And then my writing. Yeah, I feel like you folks listening at home is maybe slightly less interesting, but Just Rusty did ask, and I'm happy to discuss it. So those will be the 3 sections. Why write a book? So this prompt was one of the prompts that I posted for the month that you requested this Parley. Every month, people who pay for Parley as a service to get the podcasty-like things here on the Pantaloon Saloon channel made about their topic of choice, basically they're paying, Just Rusty is paying, to have a podcast-like episode thing sort of shoved in the direction of their interest. And you can do that by submitting a prompt of your own, whatever you want. That's what most Parley are. People submit whatever prompt. But I do submit a few, just from my personal notes, every month as well. The intent being that if you want the service, you get a podcasty-like thing shoved in a direction you like. You don't have to come up with a prompt. You may come up with a prompt, but you don't have to get something that is like what you want. So if you're not sure, you can just look at my prompts and say, oh, I'll have some more of that. And you can always add stuff to them as well, which is what you did here. Naturally, this means I have some splainin' to do, because I think I only wrote why write a book ? And that's it, like no other comments about for this particular one. I often elaborate more than that. They're usually not quite that short, even though a lot of mine are pretty short. I know what it means. It's from my notes, right? They're going to tend to be short. So I'll tell you what I mean, because I think it will be a good way to segue into the rest of the discussion. What is writing a book? Is basically the bone I have to pick with this subject, and the thing that has determined my interest in writing for my life so far, and probably for the foreseeable future. Basically is the relationship between thinking about having written a book and writing a book. Writing a book, doing the activity that one does for a living, certainly the things I'm going to do with my life, is of the highest concern to me. I don't care what the benefit of it is when I have done it, because I don't live when I have done it. I live now, which means I am bored now, unless I'm doing something that I enjoy. Understand, this is maybe a hot take to some degree about this subject. An actual hot take, not an inflammatory nonsense take. You know, saying that you don't want to do something that you don't enjoy doing is lazy, you could say. What is bad about being determined to do something that you think is worth having done? Like, well, nothing, I guess. I just feel like there are often people in the world who want to be doing most tasks, and why not have those people be doing it? I think if we have a diverse range of things we want to be doing, it's not so bad to just organize our lives that way. It's certainly a lot better for us, for me in this case, and I have a feeling that that will make the thing I will make better. I'll be willing to spare no expense on it. I think that will make having written it better. I think the good way to get the benefits of having written a book is to enjoy writing a book, but that is an approach to such things. Kind of like how there are different ways to act. There's method acting as an approach. There are other ways you could act that do not involve kind of embodying the character, you know, a lot of the time or at all times. That's not the single right way to do it. I don't think this is the single most helpful way to think about writing, but this isn't a Parley about motivating you to write more. I'm just going to tell you why I care about this. So what is my bone to pick here? having written a book versus writing a book. First of all, I want to get out of the way that there's a lot of surface level complaints about like books and books not being pointful things. The trivialization of book recommendations on something like Book Talk, where people give comically short recommendations of books in TikTok threads. Well, they'll just hold up a book closed and make a facial expression and then put it down as if that is anything meaningful or useful to anyone ever and deserves to exist as a thing that is helpful for recommending books. It is not. That is not useful. I think a lot of people are critical of books because they feel like they are an inherently slower or laggy piece of entertainment in the age of instant gratification. I am not going to dwell on this point because, to be blunt, I don't think it's a very interesting or well thought out complaint. First of all, in the first place, there are many books that a lot of people really like that are exciting on page one. It's not like because it's a long thing, you inherently have to like wait for it to get good. And indeed, I think the downfall of most entertainment is that people have attached themselves to this idea that things need to or should be expected to kind of use all the space to build up to something, and that therefore the beginning will be inherently boring or vegetables somehow. That is not my experience of the things I think are good. I have an overwhelmingly massive, way too much entertainment that I will never finish, and I don't wait for any of it to get good. I like all of it right away, whether it's a piece of entertainment that is 30 seconds in a YouTube short, or 15 hours if I'm reading a book, or 80 hours when I'm playing Metaphor Refantatio or whatever. I think that people who are bored of the beginning of a piece of entertainment and therefore think that piece of entertainment, that type of entertainment is boring, are simply picking the wrong of those pieces of entertainment for them, or maybe just not as much of the good ones. I don't know. And I'm going to leave it at that, just with the encouragement that if you happen to be listening to this and you're a person who just thinks books are inherently boring, I assure you that phenomenon people are pointing at is not something that the people who like books experience. And in general, I think that this is an important way to approach anything. What do the people that have consumed a lot of the medium think is good about it? Not what do people in general think about the medium. That is not of interest. They don't know about the medium. So go figure. And there's a lot of books written that are not maybe that great, which brings us to part 2, which is the utility of writing a book, kind of where my bone needs to be picked. That came out wrong. Whoops, maybe shouldn't get too excited about my writing career, eh? Basically, the problem here is that I feel like when people discuss basically doing anything in our society, but writing books in this case, they're referring to the benefits of having done it, not doing it. And the results shift the kinds of things that are made in a way that is not useful for anyone. So basically in this section, what I'm going to try to convince you of, I guess, or just demonstrate why I think, is that there are basically no benefits to having written a book unless it's entertaining for other people. And so that makes things much easier. If you don't enjoy writing a book, and if enjoying writing a book is the best way to make it entertaining for other people, then that is the only reason to write a book, because there aren't any other benefits to having written a book, or having written a book is a bad way to accomplish basically everything else. Basically everything, actually. It's not a very efficient way to make entertainment either. And to do this, I'm going to start by, I literally just Googled why write a book. Now, being that when people pay for Parley, Just Rusty has paid $9 for my 2 cents about this subject. And so, yeah, I do often punch in like short Parley requests like this. I do sometimes just type them into a search engine. What would the free version of an answer have been? It's, you get what you pay for. I'm going to read you some of the little summary that this search engine spat out. Why write a book? From sources across the web, it says. And I'm just going to read you a few of the headlines, okay? And I want you to think about what is motivating these things. If they do the thing well or poorly, whatever, where is the benefit for each of these, okay? Why write a book? Because books are important. Why though? For your legacy. After you're dead, writing a book will benefit you. Continue reading. Okay, that one, that's time out. I'm calling a foul. That doesn't, that's not this. Ooh, okay, but I expanded it and it said a book can even be used as a powerful business card to promote a brand. The wording is cool. I disagree with the idea. Grow confidence. I guess like in yourself to contribute to your community. That's interesting. Fostering a sense of connection and shared understanding. Oh, sure. If you write about an experience that is maybe unique to you and other people. Okay. Credibility, creative expression. Creativity is a separate entry. Influencing change to inspire change. Again, cheating. Share your message. To make millions. Generate passive income. Okay, that's much more reasonable. Sure, sure. There you go. Anyway, the point is, a lot of them are after you're done writing the book. This is the benefit it will have, and we can organize them into roughly three categories: money, to make millions. I'm not sure there's anything you can do that is a worse way to make millions than writing a book, but that's by the by. Generate passive income. I mean, yeah, books aren't a bad way to do that, actually. Um, the second one would be, I guess, like social capital. People will care more about your opinion or respect you more or something. Not thoughtful and people who interrogate the subject. Only shallow people will care about that, but like, okay, you can make money off those people. So I guess that one is kind of the same as it won't actually impress anyone who matters. So the social capital one is like you could convert that into money, I guess. So those are kind of the same thing. And then the third one, I guess, would be like intellectualism, gestures vaguely, it will further the human project. Yeah, I mean, I'll put that one aside. I'm not going to say that it's bad to record human stories or knowledge or to contribute to a community. It's not that those are bad things necessarily, but I'm not sure that it will be beneficial to have shared those things unless you like sharing them. So I do feel like that ties back into writing a book would make that result of having written a book better. Presumably that one would turn out the best if you enjoyed writing a book. Whereas having written a book like To Make Millions, for example, yeah, I mean, the writing the book doesn't matter at all. You just would want to get a book done. And it won't make you happier or a better person to have made millions in and of itself. If your life is full of gigantic pockets of year-long stretches where you did something you don't want to do, you will not then be happy if you make millions. Your life will be an empty husk, and you can just go on that one subreddit where a bunch of rich people are really depressed because they don't know what to do with their lives. No shade. I feel like those people are trying to figure that out. I feel like that's cool of them. I don't know. But it's not. That's not good. That doesn't actually benefit you. Making money is not a good in and of itself. It's going to be converted into amenities. So this is my point, basically, that a lot of the things that people are interested in, not just from this post, I'm suggesting think about it in your own life. When people say they want to go on a vacation or they want to climb Mount Everest or they, want to have started an Etsy shop or they want to write a book, I think if you look closely, you will notice that they usually are referring to that they want to have done that. They don't want to be doing it. They feel like it will kind of build their personality somehow. But this does not exist if you are anything other than a very shallow pool of a person. It is a fulfilling human life to enjoy the things you're doing. Is the path to happiness, in my opinion. And so I just don't want to do it unless I enjoy doing it. The problem then is that our culture is so fixated, so obsessed with having done the thing. I personally find that upon analysis, it is not immediately apparent what writing a book, what climbing Mount Everest, what etc. actually entails. Yeah, if people are so overly focused on the result and not the journey, I mean, the result of the focus on the result is that we don't see the journey as easily. Now, nowadays, of course, you can see, a YouTube documentary of people climbing Mount Everest. And if you were ever considering climbing Mount Everest, I would highly recommend that you watch a video like that first. It's the same thing with writing. why would you want to spend years of your life writing a book without knowing what it will be like to write a book? I don't. And that is why I did National Novel Writing Month, a thing you can do to check if you enjoy writing a book. To an extent. We'll get into it in section 2, but obviously you don't have the experience of editing the book in the same way with like another editor. Maybe you do, maybe you have the good fortune of doing that. Would be cool to do that. And you know, distributing the book, publishing the book might not even be commercially or professionally, could just be two friends. But even then, it's like, well, if that's what it is, you could see if you enjoy doing those things. So, like for distribution, for example, maybe you, like me, are the dungeon master, the game master of a game of D&D or a tabletop role-playing game. You could add a supplement or a feature to your game and write it and format it and edit it and print it out and then pseudo publish it to your playgroup and friends and say, hey, if you use some of these features, I'll kind of give you them for free for your, maybe it's like a new spell and your character can just use it for free a little. I'll give you spell scrolls for it or something. And you can test it out and just tell me what you think. I just ask in return that you tell me what you think. You could have that experience if you wanted to. I think it is worth briefly taking a detour, despite our limited time, into what writing a book entails for a sec, just so you know what I mean at the very least. And of course, we'll talk about it more in section 2. You know, I'm talking about plotting out the structure of a book, basically. You know, you outline to an extent, or maybe you don't. Maybe you write in a discovery-based way. You sit down, the page is completely blank, and for a lot of people, they like that, and they sort of find out what the story is. And what they enjoy is they sit down the next week, they don't know what they're going to write. The page before them, or at least the rest of the book, is completely blank, but they get the, to them, exciting experience of like finding out what the story is going to be next, putting characters in the world and thinking about what they would reasonably do, or whatever in that case. Not a writing style I've done that much, but interesting, well-documented thing that some people like. Does that sound like something you or I want to do? My answer is personally not really. I'm not disinterested in that idea, but it isn't the like primary thing that I'm interested in when I think about writing. Or like outlining. A really interesting writing process I've been thinking about a lot lately is where people write the last, not necessarily the exact last page or chapter of the book, but the last like big scene in the plot of the book, if that applies, or the last big character development scene. And then after writing that, they think about what about that scene is exciting to them and what context you would need to know as the reader for that scene to have its payoff. You then write those scenes, and maybe scenes that set up those scenes or add the context needed for those scenes. And then, once you have gotten to a point where the story is bubbling forth, but you are just beginning to create that context, you stop, and that's the story. You in a kind of reverse utilitarian way, you write the scenes needed for the end of the book to be good, basically. Very interesting writing technique. Do you like doing that? Do you want to plot that out? You see what I mean? Personally, yes, I see it kind of like making a build. I think that's fun. When I've written in the past, I often do that. Or something similar to it. What I was doing was a little weird. It was like I would do that, but start in the middle, basically. In the exciting part of this story to me, what is happening? And a few things happen when you do that. One of the things that delighted me was to realize that often, though I had conceptualized that as the middle of the story, if that's where things become exciting, why don't you just start there? And a lot of the time that just works pretty much. And you can sort of do the things that would have been earlier in the story as flashbacks or not do them, or people will get them through context, you know. I think that's very interesting. If that doesn't sound interesting, if setting aside a few hours to go write, if writing a little bit here and there in 1,000 different places in the little moments in your life, if you write that way, like a little bit on the train, a little at a coffee shop, a little while you're taking a shit, if that doesn't sound enjoyable, well, to write a book, if you buy into the benefits of having written a book, as I don't, well, to get those benefits, you need to have years of your life be defined by that stuff. So if you don't like it, you will for sure be guaranteed to be miserable for years in exchange for making millions. Do you see my problem now? It's just kind of insane. Like, I feel like writing is basically the last thing on earth you would want to do for the results of having written a book. Basically, it's not a very good way to get any of those results. It's not a very efficient way to get any of those results, except maybe the social capital or like business card thing. But you could probably have a book ghost written at your direction if that was really what you wanted to do, or like write it with someone else. But I guess we'll get into that in section 2. I don't think that writing a book is a good idea unless you like that in of itself. And if when you were finished, the book more or less winked out of existence, all but remaining in your memory, I'm not sure it's a great idea to write it, because you're going to be left with a huge amount of your life you know for sure you won't enjoy in exchange for, at best, random benefits afterward. So, bad, in my opinion. In addition to this, there's kind of a third part here that we're going to talk about more in my section 3 about my writing, but I do think it's important to include, which is the advantages of writing a book. This is kind of the deeper version of the why write a book, books are boring or long or whatever thing that I kind of avoided before. I think that's kind of a shallow question. I think there is a deeper version of the question, which is what is good about books? Like what are the benefits of books a little bit more thoroughly? What's hard or easy to do in a book? And these would be things, again, like maybe action is often said to be hard to write in a book. Action scenes, a fight scene, let's say. Well, it's a lot of specific mechanical movements between characters that are difficult to describe, but you kind of need to picture fairly exactly, or you aren't seeing everything that would be cool about seeing that fight scene occur. Think about an anime, or it could just be an action movie in Hollywood or whatever, fight scene that you've seen that was cool. Think about what you need to do to describe that. In some cases, it can be surprisingly okay. An example of a type of fight scene that I think might be surprisingly easy to write in a satisfying way would be like Iron Man. Imagine Iron Man fighting someone. Well, a lot of the attacks are repulsor blasts or big swoopy flight animations, extremely technical swordplay. This is not. Not to say that it's not interesting and technical sometimes. I really like the Hulkbuster fight scene personally. The way that the Hulkbuster armor kind of traps the Hulk is interesting, technical in a way, but you see what I mean. It's big, cinematic, and kind of blocky, for lack of a better term. It's sort of easy to describe that way. Whereas a fencing duel, a lot of anime sword fights, strike me as being ludicrously difficult to describe in a meaningful way. I do think one of the reasons that people don't enjoy reading as much as maybe they could is that they get overly hung up on precisely interpreting fight scenes or descriptive passages. But at the same time, sometimes that like is the thing that would be cool about seeing the fight scene, and so that is difficult. Now, on the other hand, although you could adapt fight scenes for the written form, a book, I also think it's the case that there are things that are advantages. You imagine that anime fight scene again. Well, yeah, it's really easy to visually show the technical swordplay or whatever, but it's not as easy to show the characters talking in their heads or what they're thinking or strategizing when they do that. I mean, it's done. We hear them speak. But I mean, we have to hear them speak, and that has to take time. Time, speaking a sentence aloud for the viewer to hear while they're watching the anime, that is not as fast as the technical swordplay or whatever combat they're doing. And it leads to the common trope of characters on the sidelines of the fight describing what's happening in the fight. Like it or hate it, well, anyway, that is a result of doing it that way. Writing, by contrast, writing a book, could be a way to describe a lot of what's going on in your characters' heads during an action sequence in a maybe more elegant way. This is something books can do really naturally and smoothly, elegantly. The audience is kind of used to hearing what's going on in the characters' heads. So, in a way, it has its own particular strengths. Now, you don't have to write a book because it fits the strengths of the story you're writing, just to say, that could be why you choose to write a book. Why write a book? Why be writing a book? Could be that constructing the story you want to tell as a book would be much more pleasant than constructing the story you want to tell as a video game or like as an anime, for example. It is true that a lot of the time people make one using the medium they have. They make a story and they tell it using the medium they have, regardless of the trade-offs. In my opinion, this is a little defeatist. I think pretty much everybody could become a person relatively easily who could choose from at least a few mediums. Writing and video game design are two relatively easy ones. Nobody can really stop you from just doing these on your own, and the resources to do so are free and broadly available. And within a year, let's say, you could, if you chose to, tell a story of your choosing through writing a book or a video game, even if at this moment you have zero experience with either of those things. I think most people with an intrepid mind would be able to do that. And so there's kind of no such thing as not being able to choose what medium you put something in, if that is something you're interested in. If you hate that idea, whatever. Again, this isn't a parlay about convincing you to write a book or make a video game. I think we need less better of those, not more of those. I'm not here to encourage you to write a book. I just spent a lot of time talking about why it's a bad idea to write a book. But there's lots of benefits to books. And what I would like is for more people who want those things to write a book, and less people who don't want the benefits of writing a book to write a book. Is that not better for everyone? Anyway, I think that's it for section 1. So in summary, I just feel like a lot of motivations presented for writing books are misguided, and books are maybe a little misunderstood as a form of entertainment. Therefore, it can be useful to evaluate what writing a book, what actually spending the time doing that will do for you, because you don't have to write a book. There's no special prize or accolade from anyone who is critical of the subject anyway for writing a book. Nobody who really thinks about it will respect you more just merely because you wrote a book, if it isn't a good book or a book that you actually care about, for example. You will only convince people that don't really think about it much, meaning you can likely only benefit from that by making money with or off of them. I just feel like there are easier ways to make money. Basically, everything is an easier way to make money. But anyway, and that, I don't know, like putting aside the benefits to the human project, a topic too large for this conversation, books being good for the world, I just personally think that it is true that people who want specifically the things a book is good at, writing more books and other people writing less books, would probably work out. And so is that such a bad place to start? And then we spend a little time talking about what those things are. What are the unique utilities of writing a book? Okay, section 2 on the parts of writing a book a little bit more deeply. And we're going to talk about that thing you said about people kind of hating the editing or enjoying the writing process. Basically, my thesis for this section is that although I just got finished saying that I think it is beneficial, I find it very beneficial, to focus on what writing a book is like, and that can be kind of hard because our culture is not as focused on it. You think about it for a little bit. Yeah, but it's also still a relatively broad activity, right? I took care to include some writing methods, approaches to writing in that section, and that's kind of what I mean. I think that the dichotomy here is you'd want to enjoy writing a book, but that could be a lot of things. You just need to make sure that you like one of them that is feasible, not necessarily one specific thing, if that makes sense. And so, for example, I'll take me as a video creator. Early in my career, having had a very troubled time getting myself in order, well, I realized that I really hated the video editing process. Just to be specific, I think about the video I want to make, I get footage from games to use to make it, I play the games in such a way as I think of the idea, maybe it's a build video. I write the script and edit the script. I'm enjoying all of this so far. I record the script, we're all good. But then taking the clips from the recording and dumping them into an editor to simply stitch them together and render them into a single file to be uploaded to YouTube. That, I hate that. I don't like that. Why I don't like it is not super productive, but I will briefly tell you so you get where I'm coming from. It's just not very necessary for the kind of video I'm making. I'm excited to learn more about and share my ideas with all of you, hear what people think of them, see it inspire other ideas. The comments I get are usually really good. It's very interesting to see my idea from how I was playing kind of put to the page in a way. Again, you can kind of write to learn what you think about something a little bit. That's interesting to me. I think that's a fun way to write. You write the premise you have right now, like a hypothesis for an experiment, and then just kind of find out but your conclusion is, I guess I think this about this now that I've written this video. I think that's fun. I'm not sure I'm actually very good at doing that, but that's what I'm trying to do when I write a lot of videos. I like all that stuff. I like making videos, I concluded. I just hate this specific step because for me, it's kind of unnecessary. It doesn't really do any of that. It's just kind of a mechanical step in the way. So I eliminated it. I mean, you could hire someone to do it for you. Lots of people do that. You could write videos that you do not plan to edit, or you could make a process for making videos that deletes that step of stitching the video together. I don't like doing much in the video editor. Some people enjoy that and add value to their videos that way, but I don't. So why don't you just delete that step? And I developed a recording process where I kind of live-ish perform while pausing the recording. I record in a file format where I can pause it and freeze time, set everything up backstage, sort of like a theater transition, and then hit play on the recording again and say that next part. And recording that way, all I have to do is silence any little, fumbling around or button clicking sounds within reason in YouTube's editor. And I don't have to spend the step of clicking through the whole video. I basically just watch it to check to make sure everything is buttoned up and I'm good. I enjoy this process much more. I've been doing that for years. I don't have video editing software installed on my computer. I have not ever, actually, because this is a newer computer, had video editing software on this computer for years. And I hope I never will have to. I like this process. It's fun to me. So you see what I mean? There aren't infinitely many ways to enjoy writing a video, but there are a few that are significantly different. In no way does it demonstrate that you taking the advice I gave, if you view it as advice, enjoy writing a book, and then you try writing a book one way or another, and you don't like that process, in no way means that you can't enjoy writing a book. So if you want to for some reason, I do think it's worth thinking about why, why do you still want to do it? For a lot of people, the deep down reason is they feel like it would make them a better person to have written a book, and I think it is worth disabusing oneself of that notion. It will not make you a more valid person to have written a book. You are a valid person already. It doesn't change that if you have written a book. It will only affect people's opinions if they have a pretty shallow opinion of you. But without getting into writing advice more than I already just did for the past 25, 30 minutes, wow. It could be a lot of different processes, right? So, Just Rusty, when you say, I enjoyed the game design, didn't love the writing, had so much fun working with the editor, to me it's like, maybe you enjoyed the game design specifically, and maybe you enjoyed working with the editor because it kind of became the writing process, which you didn't enjoy in this case. Maybe wording specifically, finding a wording that worked for the abilities that you had in mind wasn't fun to you, but puzzling that out and making sure things were as interesting as they could be was fun. I'd love to hear more about what was interesting about that to you. On the contrary, though, I think you may be right that a lot of people prefer writing and don't like editing. I think the reason is probably pretty simple. You add to your word count or something, don't you think? I wonder if this indicates that one enjoys writing, though. After all, if you write a passage for a book and then you delete it, I mean, it's good for the video to be shorter. When I do a chunk of a video for the Zany Pants or the Bootleg Builds channels, where I do cut stuff out now and again, and I remove it, I'm happy I removed it. I already got the value out of it. I got to learn something about what I think about it. And the thing I want from the video is for it to be a concise, focused, crisp expression of the thing I was trying to share with all of you so you can enjoy it. It doesn't make me happy if you appreciate more of my work. That doesn't benefit me in any way. I guess other than maybe it would be egotism, I would feel like I made you more stuff, but that's not valuable. That's not valuable to you. It's inconvenient. You have less time, right? It'd be better if it was shorter. It's a joy to cut these things out of books, in my humble experience. And to me, that is coming from the fact that I enjoyed the process of writing the book. Therefore, I'm not hung up on this part of the book, actually staying in the book. I had the benefit writing that part, and now that's gone. So having written it, I don't care at all. I can just delete it. It's not a big deal. So I can't help but suspect that you're maybe right that a lot of people enjoy the process of like adding words and don't enjoy editing through it. But I wonder if maybe some of that is because people have different motivations for writing the thing they're writing. I don't know. I feel like there could be a lot of reasons people feel that way. And you might also be wrong, of course. We can't really know easily. I feel like what you're saying is a reasonable claim. I get that people would straightforwardly like adding words to a page, go, 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 and they get to express the story they have in mind. To be fair, while it might be that they just want to have written the most words, it could also be that they really love the writing process. And it's just that moving forward with that, expressing the story they have in their mind, is what they're excited about. And editing doesn't feel like it as directly gratifies that. Maybe. And that could be very in line with enjoying writing a book, or it might not be. I don't know. I don't know. I that's been my experience, just Rusty, working with other people, editing other people's work. I edited my literary magazine in high school. I was one of the 2 head student editors for editing that. This is a very interesting experience. So I would go to people who'd submitted stuff that we'd accepted and said, "Can we do a round of edits together?" And I would talk with them, and they would, you know, do the edits or reject them or whatever, and we would go from there. And then the literary magazine would have some nice polished pieces in it. I thought there was some pretty solid stuff in there, some pretty decent writing. And part of the reason was that we went through a round of editing with the stuff we accepted with the people who wrote it. That was very interesting. People are very defeatist with edits, in my humble experience, at least at that writing level. They felt like if something is said to be wrong by the editor, which was in this case me, they tend to just accept it. And I often had a hard time doing the thing I think is more interesting, which is, okay, but like this is an arguable change. Like I think it's good because this, that you might think it's bad. Like what is the purpose of this part? If you feel like it needs to be in here, maybe it does and I just don't see it. Maybe removing it would make it worse, but I don't know. I think that's interesting. That's part of why I like editing, because I don't care about cutting stuff out of my piece. So there's really no negative. I don't care about making progress as much as like doing the activity, fiddling with my story. Just like I don't mind if I make a build and I delete some of the build and swap it in for something else. That doesn't make me sad. That's the fun part. I want to swap things in and out. And likewise, I'm happy to kind of puzzle out what combination of pieces would work. This character has this plot line, and I want to get them from point A to point B. How do I do that? This poem is trying to express this idea, and I have this few many adjectives to use to suggest that I don't know. And so you make those work somehow. I think it's fun. It's like a weird puzzle. So I enjoy that part. Basically, the thing I'm trying to get across, though, in this section is primarily that while it is interesting to weigh what parts of it people like and for what reason, and while I think sometimes the culprit is their motivation for writing is kind of not good, to be blunt, and so that's why they like some parts and not others, it also might not be. And I think it's worth being very open-minded about what the writing process is for an individual person. Like me fiddling with my video production method, you can kind of make it be whatever you want in many ways, and I think that is worth doing. That could be really fun. Again, just different ways to write a story could be really good. I got into it a little earlier, but really, like if this is something someone was interested in, I don't really know why. I will always be skeptical of somebody being interested in or say they want to write a book or are writing a book if they have not tried doing it in like a smaller way first. So for example, National Novel Writing Month. I feel like it should be more popular than it even is, maybe logically. If you want to write a book, it baffles me that you would not want to check if you like writing books, I guess, in context. And you can do that. It's a little harder than some other activities. I'm not sure you really know if you like soccer by going out and kicking a soccer ball. So maybe it's not that much. Maybe you do have to play like a good amount of soccer. Or another example would be something like Magic the Gathering. I'm not sure you know if you like Magic the Gathering the way it will be if you have a more refined or focused strategy or a more whimsical and weird strategy just by playing a pickup game of Magic the Gathering. Having done it at all doesn't just tell you what it's like. But I think with writing, it's kind of easier because as a long activity, it's very hard to have done it without having been doing it for a meaningful amount of time. And that did tell you what it was like, building a deck, iterating a deck. These are things that take time if you play Magic. And I think that tells you more about whether you like playing the game, not just having it in your arsenal of superficial personality traits or something. I don't know. And for writing, I think the equivalent is that, yeah, like it is a little time consuming, yes, compared to other activities, but you can go do it. You can write short stories. Getting in the habit of writing at any arbitrary time is another approach you could take. I heard an interesting piece of writing advice one time. Someone said, I'm metagaming a little bit. Most people who ask for writing advice are trying to write, but have failed to find time to write. So I recommend, they said, that you do not set aside time to write and instead just become able to write at any arbitrary point. You've got a free moment while taking a shit, was what I suggested before. Well, then do it then. Write a little bit then. You've got a waiting room for a doctor's appointment. Write then. Become someone who can write then. Interesting approach for some people, might be a good supplementary approach for some people. I do that actually for video scripts. And I imagine I would do it if I was writing like a story or a novel or something. I imagine I would continue to do this. I write a meaningful 15%, I don't know, like an eighth maybe, of the video scripts that I write in like weird moments between spaces. Usually I'll type them on my phone and then I put them in a document that sends it to my computer. And then like a chunk of a script will kind of be there. Again, maybe an eighth, ish, I don't know, of my writing is that. So it could be a supplemental method as well. The point is doing it in a way where you can find time and then just see if you like it. When I write like that, I get excited. I'm excited about the thing I'm writing. And when I get cut off, I'm cut off. And I think, I gotta keep doing it. If you do this and it feels like work, you might be able to make it not feel like work. And I don't want to discourage people from doing that, but this isn't about motivating you to write. Maybe that means you don't enjoy it as much. I don't know. Like I just want people to know, I think this would be helpful for me. I, as someone who enjoys writing, I am not forcing myself to do it. Like it's not like vegetables. It doesn't require willpower for me to sit down and write stuff. I'm not saying it's wrong to write if it does require that of you. I just want you to know I'm not special. There is a way you could become a person where it would not require willpower for you to output something you wanted to output. And that might be more worth acquiring than like just forcing yourself to write, for example. Or maybe there is something to be found by doing that. I can't know for sure if my past self, who has before forced myself to write for National Novel Writing Month, maybe gained this feeling from doing that. I don't know. I can't promise you that's not true. I don't think so, but I don't know. I would have to think about that more. So yeah, I don't know, the writing process thing. If you can write with other people, if you can write in different ways and try writing and try more ways of writing, I guess that means writing shorter things. If you were going to make video games and apply this strategy, you would need to make a lot of shorter games, at least early in your time making video games, to learn what you like about the process. I feel like this is a massive step that almost everybody misses in most creative pursuits. Taking a good amount of time in your life before you're locked into doing this thing, for many people for basically the rest of their professional life, to look before you leap and see how you like to do that thing. You have tastes about this. You just might not know what they are. I know I have tastes about it that I definitely did not know before some of them pretty recent actually. I just redid my work schedule, for example. That was very interesting. Okay. So yeah, to summarize, I do think the different steps of writing are really interesting, and finding ways to kind of simulate that, think about why people might like different steps over others, how you might come to be able to like a certain part of the process, maybe by editing out parts that you dislike, telling the difference between when you dislike a part of the process that can be removed and when you dislike something that is kind of elemental to the pursuit, I think is helpful. That's hard, I think, but you have to make a judgment call. I think that's a useful thing to do. It's worth making a judgment call about. Can be very interesting, very helpful. My writing. Yeah, man, I don't know. Here's what the assignment was. In my capstone class as an English major focused in creative writing, My assignment was to write a novella, a short novel, a couple hundred pages, to give you an idea, like 150 to 200 pages. If it were in print, was what she asked us to do, which is different in like Word document pages. I typed it, of course. We had to print it out and share it with people. So, it wasn't that long when it was all printed out, but it would be if it was a book. It'd be a small book, a novella. Specifically, it was meant to be about, in terms of style, basically. The contents could be whatever we wanted, but in terms of style, it was meant to be a synthesis of things in two other authors' books that we were meant to find and read and describe that we wanted to kind of acquire, steal, and combine into our own text. So we're meant to pick two books, at least two books, by two different authors, say a thing we found interesting in their style or form or some larger thing, not their like plot or whatever necessarily. Combine those things, do both of them in a novella of our own. I chose Anne Goretta's Sphinx and Haruki Murakami's Hard-Boiled Wonderland and the End of the World. Anne Goretta's Sphinx has this really interesting thing, mostly in the first third of the book. It's short. If you were interested in dipping your toes into that, you could be in and out quickly. I would do that first. If you're crazy and have decided to mimic my process, read this one first. The first third of Sphinx, at least, does this really interesting thing with manipulating perception of gender. So it's written in the second person. Anne Goretta is writing, translated from French, as a member of the French experimental writing group Oulipo. Now, French, as a language, has gender. There's gender attached to most things. There's different forms of words with different genders. Writing in the second person, you do this, that, and the other thing, is how the book is written. Obscuring gender is weird in French. Like that has its unique challenges. It's very bizarre. And she takes this really interesting approach to it where she kind of doesn't shy away from things that would make you associate with gender. People, to varying degrees, will often perceive people or actions as being associated with a certain societal role, possibly a gender role. And Sphinx does this very interesting thing where she kind of bullies you into not doing that anymore, is how I would just, that's what I thought it was doing anyway. That's what I thought was interesting. I'm not sure that's a good way to do it, like for society, ethics, I don't know. I'm just saying I thought it was fascinating and that it was an interesting use of the second person. My text was going to take the second person thing and obscure, to use that to obscure in an interesting way, not necessarily gender, which wasn't a significant theme of my work, but I just thought it was interesting. Haruki Murakami's Hard-Boiled Wonderland and the End of the World, so titled as if it's two different stories, is because it alternates chapters between a fairly realistic, fairly down-to-earth sort of cyberpunk light dystopia mystery, not that cyberpunk, but anyway, and the other chapters, every other chapter, is a kind of abstract dream sequence metaphor world that it's not entirely clear where you are. Not exactly presented as being the same or a related place, basically. And they alternate. So every even-numbered chapter is the one thing and every odd-numbered chapter is the other thing. Something very strange happens when you read the fantastical abstract dreamscape chapters and then you go back to one of the down-to-earth kind of dystopian we're solving a crime chapters. Your brain goes, this is sort of mystical and creepy in a way it wasn't, that isn't on the page, that isn't in the writing of that part, because I just had the kind of palate cleanser or palate uncleanser, tainter, affector, flavor saver of the previous chapter, if that makes sense. Very strange. You can kind of affect how a piece of text feels off the page. There's something in film that's really common like this. You might hear called the Kuleshov effect, I believe, where basically they juxtapose two images really quickly, and because you saw this first, you now feel different about this other thing. A character's looking down sadly, and you just saw a gun in a character's hand. Looks very different from if you see it raining outside and a character's looking down sadly. Even though you don't see the gun in the hand of the person looking down sadly, that changes the context of seeing that image next. You assume things about those two images. Of course, I guess human pattern recognition go burr is what this part is. And so I, in my novella, also wrote alternating chapters. I'm getting excited because it was a fun project. The story itself is not much to speak of. I'm not going to get into that too much here. I will just say it was an interesting experience. I wrote it very fast. I would say there are about three speeds, paces of writing that people will often mix and match, and that will form sort of their writing pace. There are the people that write steadily. There are people who write in big bursts. And then there's the kind of guerrilla warfare, writing while taking a shit or waiting at the dentist or something thing that I was describing earlier. And I would say I'm mostly the second two, mostly the burst and the guerrilla warfare one, not as much the steady one. But I actually really like combining all three. I really enjoy having different paces of work. I do that with videos too. I like having different lengths of workday and different like tasks or moods or themes to the workday. I don't know why. I enjoy that variety. You might as well. I bet more people than do that would enjoy that, but it might make some people unfocused. For me, it definitely makes me more productive. I wrote most of my novella in one weekend. I wrote it in an enormous burst. I wrote easily 10,000 words of it in one day. That's a huge amount if you're not used to word counts. That's messed up. I didn't do anything for the entire day but eat, go to the restroom, and write. And I had a lot of fun. I enjoyed writing it that way. A lot of it, because of the way the assignment worked, I did have to write more at pace, and that was, I think, helpful to do. Still, I don't think that this gave me the experience of writing a book meaningfully. It was kind of different. It let me see if I like arraying my ideas that way, but it didn't show me things like a really intense editing and restructuring process, troubleshooting the work rather than just editing on a local level. I did plenty of editing, but I didn't radically restructure the text in the way that I think you often would if you were troubleshooting like a novel. And there's also a do or die feeling. Like if you were going to become a published fiction writer for a living, for example, not that that's at all the only way to write a book or have people benefit from writing a book. You would probably have a do or die thing happen where, you've written this book, but it just doesn't work. You need to take it apart and rebuild it in a way that works for a living. Like you urgently need to find a way to make it work. You know what I mean? In this case, I was allowed to say this was a useful experiment and I don't have to die on the hill of this anymore. It's fine. You see what I mean? That is very different. So I'm not saying that means it doesn't like count or whatever. That doesn't matter. I don't care about having done it or not. But I would just say I would be interested in the experience of writing a book because I think that is meaningfully different from what I experienced. I liked it okay. I think I would like writing a book better in some ways. I like puzzling through, like fixing the thing. That might mean that I would make a better editor, it occurs to me, or that it would be interesting to kind of combine with someone else's writing. I had this relationship like early in college where I spent a lot of time co-writing poetry with my partner. That was really interesting. That was surprisingly effective. I was surprised how coherent it was, I guess. I might be interested in looking at that again, especially for books, especially for writing a book. I think that would be neat. I'm not sure exactly how I'd want to do that, but it's been done. I mean, people, those books exist. I guess I should read some of them. That I haven't before knowingly read a book that was co-authored that way. That's what I have to say. Interests for my writing in the future. They exist, yeah. I would like to experiment with writing action in that way I described much earlier in the parlay, where yeah, there's some weaknesses to action in book form. But when you look at it, there are some strengths too, and the weaknesses, younger Zandy overestimated those weaknesses. Like, you can do it. I've read interesting choreographed, I guess, action scenes in the written word since. And that has lit a bit of a fire in me. I wanted to write that, but I've kind of had assumed in my younger life that it was off the table, gotten more open-minded as I got older, but sort of didn't readdress the issue. And I just happened recently to have read some things that I felt like did it very well. And so I thought, okay, that's definitely back on the table. Like, I'm convinced of that now. And I would really like to use that element of being able to see what's in the character's head to write about meta understanding, competitive combat in a magic system. an audience member recommended to me an anime called World Trigger. World Trigger is an anime they recommended with the premise that it is a buildcraft anime or a magic system. It has a very hard power system, very defined, very rules-based power system. Characters literally get a little thingy that they can slot in up to 8 different triggers, abilities, pieces of technology that manifest their inner energy, like as if it was a build screen in a video game, and then that's what they use in the competitions. And so characters will go, oh, that guy's like Kogetsu is a katana trigger. That guy's a Kogetsu main who put like these triggers on, so he's got like a few more slots. Like, what other weird optional triggers is he using? Or like, this guy brought 2 blade triggers. That's unusual. He filled up a lot of space doing that. Like, that's, why did he choose to do that? Maybe their team has a more defensive person. And they have all this meta thinking. It strikes me that that could work very well on the page, and that it can be a little janky for the pacing. The only reason I think World Trigger gets away with it is because the action when it happens is so intense and so fast and so cool, so damn cool, that it kind of works with the pacing. It goes from maybe kind of slow, but explanations I want to hear of what the characters chose to do, to ludicrously fast and amazing, heart-pounding sports, but I'm a techno wizard kind of action scenes. And I think you could do that very well in a book, potentially, and I would really enjoy writing such a thing. So yeah, that has lit a bit of a fire under my ass. I am interested in doing that in the future, but not soon. No promises about when that would be. I will just say I've been a fast writer in the past, so we'll see. You'll never see it coming. I think that's most of what I have to say. I think that thinking about writing a book instead of having written a book is helpful, productive, and that might take some real doing because our culture doesn't often represent that as much. Could make various corollaries to other parts of life where that isn't done as much. I think that being still open-minded, though, about what the writing process could look like and different ways to structure writing, even something like, maybe you don't like structuring the book. People who write fan fiction often respond to comments on their work, on a chapter of their work, and then kind of steer the fan fiction in a way that is based on what the comments were excited about a character, the comments favor, for example. I'm not sure that's going to be a good way to write a finished book, because they're going to tend to focus those comments on shorter term things. But if you could find a way to make the structure work, that could be a pretty interesting way to write a longer story. If you could find a way to kind of keep it on track, but steer it based on what other people said, you could kind of write without structuring it, but still have a lot of direction. Might be interesting. Again, I say that not because I think it's that good of an idea. To be blunt, I don't think that's a good idea, and that those stories are usually pretty bad, even when they've been edited a lot. I'm looking at you, 50 Shades of Grey. But just to say that if you wanted to write and you hated a part of the process, if you get creative, you can probably eliminate it. You'd have to see what the results of doing that would be. I'd like to see what that work would look like, but I'm just not going to promise you it'd be good. And then my own writing has been, and you can probably expect it to be in the future, thoroughly experimental. Let's just say it's going to be that I feel like writing a book is what is the form that it would be interesting to do this in. It's going to be very couched in like bookness, I guess, for lack of a better way to say it. I'm probably not going to write something as a book, like simply because it is a book. I'm going to want to take advantage of that format. That's just me. You don't have to do that. Being overly hung up on that is probably a bad idea, but we'll see in the future. Thank you for letting me do this extremely indulgent parlay, Just Rusty. I really appreciate the chance to just get to say everything about this subject. If you'd like to get your own parlay like this one, it can be about whatever prompts you want, or again, I offer some every month if you're interested. This made for a pretty fun one. I liked that you added some stuff too. You don't have to, but that was neat. You can do that using a link in the description. Love to have you. Looking forward to the next one.